In this video, we will discuss minimum contacts and personal jurisdiction in the United States. Minimum contacts helps a court to answer a question. When may a court assert personal jurisdiction over an out-of-state defendant in a civil lawsuit? If there are minimum contacts, then personal jurisdiction over the out-of-state defendant is constitutional. If a defendant is sued in the same state of which he is a resident, personal jurisdiction should not be a problem. For example, a New York court will have personal jurisdiction over residents of New York. But courts cannot always assert personal jurisdiction over defendants who are residents of other states. When a court tries to assert personal jurisdiction over an out-of-state defendant, we call it long-arm jurisdiction. In the United States, for a court to assert long-arm jurisdiction over a defendant in a lawsuit, the defendant must first have minimum contacts with the state. So let's say we have David, who's a resident of New Jersey, and Patty, who's a resident of New York. And one day, both David and Patty decide to go for a drive. Unfortunately, the cars collide in Massachusetts. Patty decides she's going to sue David, and because she's from New York, she sues him in New York. So now David, who's a resident of New Jersey, is being sued in a court in New York. But let's say David has no connection to New York. David never travels to New York. David doesn't operate any business in New York. David doesn't sell any products to New York. According to the United States Supreme Court, it is unconstitutional for a court to assert long-arm jurisdiction over a defendant who has no contact with the state. According to the United States Supreme Court, the constitutional right to due process of law protects out-of-state defendants in civil lawsuits. The Supreme Court explains that long-arm jurisdiction must be fair, and if there's no contact, personal jurisdiction is unfair. However, when an out-of-state defendant does have contact with the state, the type of contact and the degree of the contact may make long-arm jurisdiction constitutional. For example, let's change our story. Now David decides to drive from New Jersey to New York. David is careless and he causes an accident in New York. Again, David is being sued in a court in New York. Driving to New York and causing an accident should make it constitutional for a New York court to assert personal jurisdiction over the out-of-state defendant. New York can constitutionally assert long-arm jurisdiction over David because David had the necessary minimum contacts with New York. So, minimum contacts helps the court to answer the question, when may the court assert personal jurisdiction over an out-of-state defendant? If the defendant has sufficient minimum contacts with the state, then long-arm jurisdiction will be constitutional. If there are minimum contacts, then the court might be able to assert either specific or general personal jurisdiction. We'll talk about specific and general jurisdiction in a separate video. If you'd like to discuss personal jurisdiction or any other matter related to U.S. law, stop by the message board. Also, please visit my blog, and feel free to send me an email or to submit your comments below.